Thank you for viewing our Events Fundraising webinar series. We're excited that you're interested in learning more about fundraising for Free to Breathe and helping each individual and family impacted by lung cancer. Before we provide answers to a few questions from fundraisers just like you as they've gotten their own fundraising underway, please make sure that you view our introduction and thank you message if you haven't already. Let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, I am going to be going over a few questions that have been asked from people just like you who have gotten started with their fundraising. And my hope is that some of you, as you're getting your own fundraising underway, that this provides you with some additional information and some motivation to go ahead and get started. So let's see what we've got. How do you ask for a donation from the same people every year? Well, for me, I would go back to the basics of not making assumptions about your donors. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen through my experience with fundraising is that we feel as though we can't go back to the same person because we've asked too many times. But what I've found and experienced myself is that my individual reason for participating and for fundraising never changes. And someone's ability and desire to want to support the loss that I've experienced doesn't change. So I simply ask them, and I leave the decision up to each individual. I think, for those of us who may be a bit more hesitant, there are ways in which we can ask around that. I mentioned that I lost my father over 9 years ago. It was on August 26th, and when we've lost someone, there are dates that stand out, and they mean something to us. And so maybe what you can do is ask on one of those those memory dates for people to support your fundraising efforts. And what I love about this is that it's a way to connect your fundraising back to your reason for participating in the event. So, I guess maybe one way to phrase it would be something like, today I'm recognizing the fact that I lost my father 9 years ago. And my reasons for supporting this cause haven't changed in the past 9 years. In fact, I'm reminded that there's more time that I've experienced in this life without him. And to honor his memory and to continue the work that's still so important to me, I'd ask for you to make a donation of $50 today for my participation in the Free to Breathe event on November 16th. I think, if you set the stage with people that this is something that you plan on participating on each year, it'll help lift some of that anxiety that you may feel about going back to the same people year after year. I think, it's as simple as planting the seed and saying something like, I'm participating in Free to Breathe again. I'd like you to support me with a $50 donation. I think when you're thanking people, you can also plant that seed that you'll be doing the event again next year, and you're setting the expectation with people that you plan on doing this year after year. So my biggest thing, just in recapping, is don't make assumptions about your donors. I think people get used to you asking, and they want to continue to support the causes and the reasons that are important to you. The next question is, what is the standard or average response rate? I can say that I have never personally done the math on this. I'd need to check with some of my colleagues if that's a statistic that we track. But what I would say is that, every no brings you closer to a yes. I talked earlier about how I participated in a fundraising event, and one of the things that we don't go into detail with here, but the question provides me with a great doorway to walk into this conversation, is how important it is to follow up with people. When I fundraised for an event late last year, I used Facebook to fundraise for the first time. And it was really helpful because I was able to include a lot more people who I likely wouldn't have asked on a personal basis. But I also was able to tell people what my goal was, how far away I was from it, and since that changed so frequently, I was able to continue to communicate that to people, and it was able to spur people on. So I'm not answering your question specifically because I don't have an answer for that at this time, but what I want to do is encourage all of you to expand who you ask and to not limit that list to only close friends and family. The more people you ask, the better, and it's really important to remember how impactful it can be to follow up with someone. So, because you may send something to someone at a time when they just can't pay attention, or someone who doesn't donate, they may just be busy, they may forget, and so they may just need a reminder. All right, next question. What should I do if people don't donate? This is a little bit of piggybacking off of the last response that I gave, but as I mentioned, I participated in this one event to learn more about fundraising, and I actually asked some people 3 times before they donated. And as an event fundraiser for over 10 years, this may seem like something that would come easily to me, but it really didn't. It was uncomfortable for me. I felt bad. I felt like I was badgering people. But I needed to step out of my comfort zone, and I encourage all of you to do the same. You need to step out of your comfort zone when you're doing something bold. And fundraising, it isn't about asking people to float you some money to do something for yourself. You know, it's about supporting a cause and people who truly depend on the life-saving dollars that are raised through our events. We're asking for something that's really important, research, treatment, to buy more time for families. And I stretched myself with what I did. I kept track of the information. I analyzed the data. I put together a graph chart, which only shows how much of a geek I am. You know, but I wanted to share with all of you that I always got a huge influx of donations on the days that I sent out a reminder. You know, to this point of, you know, not being afraid who to ask or going back to the same people. I let the data speak for itself, and not a single person got mad at me or told me to stop emailing them. In fact, many people thanked me for sending a reminder, admitting that they had lost email or they had forgotten. And I think this is something that we can all relate to as we get busy in our own lives. If you're thinking that someone says no because they don't donate the first time you send out a request, you're selling your own fundraising efforts short. I would say that that's a myth that you can lift off your shoulders, as it really and truly is not what that means most of the time. I like to say that a no isn't a no until you hear a no. All right, next question. Is it better to get a donation as opposed to a pledge? You know, a pledge is just a promise, you know, usually after completion of the event. And quite honestly, I wouldn't ask for pledges. I think this is a good opportunity to kind of set the expectation that when we're doing fundraising, we're asking people to make a donation on the spot. We're providing them with a place that they can fill out a form and attach a check or provide credit card information, or we're giving them a link to our fundraising pages and giving them the opportunity to make a donation right from there. You know, what we're really trying to help everyone feel confident in doing is securing donations on the spot from people. And I think it's very uncommon these days to find someone who says that they'll donate once an event has taken place. But I think, you know, in the rare instance in which you may find yourself in that situation, if that's what a potential donor wants to do, you have to honor where the donor wants to be met with that. But with what we're doing and with this work and in this type of fundraising capacity, what we're trying to do is to secure donations, not get promises for donations or promises for pledges. Next question. Do I need to set a fundraising goal? And if so, what should I set it at? I love this question. There's a suggested individual goal that the system will share with you when you register, but one of the pluses of this event is that it is up to the individual to set their own fundraising goal. So, you know, to answer the question quickly, yes, you absolutely should set a fundraising goal. And the reason is that you're giving potential donors something to contribute to, and you're giving yourself something to work towards completing. You know, as far as how much, as an experienced fundraiser, I'd say the higher the better, you know, but you need to set it to something that's realistic for you. Attainable is important, but I always encourage people to stretch beyond their comfort level with a fundraising goal. My baseline is going to be entirely different than yours. You know, in fact, my baseline would probably be about $2,500. I have a twin sister, and she participates in one fundraising event every year. And the first time she did it, her goal was $250. And of course, I was, you know, raising my arms up in the air and telling her she had to change it, and completely overwhelming her with how overbearing I was. But I've now gotten her to a place of reaching well beyond that. But, you know, it just goes to show how varied our comfort levels are with asking people for money and how that comes across in our fundraising goals. Going back to my great big fundraising experiment from last year, I set my initial goal at $5,000, and then I continued to change the goal each time I met the initial and revised goal. And, a fundraising goal, especially for an event where there isn't a required amount, really is an individual choice based on what it is that you want to accomplish. My hope is that after hearing what I've shared today and knowing all of the amazing work that Free to Breathe does with research and education, and in my mind, most importantly, something you can't put a price tag on in providing families with time, more time with those that they love, that you'll feel compelled to aim high, $500, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, whatever that is that feels a little bit outside of your comfort zone. This is also a really great conversation to have one-on-one with our staff. You can call or email us, and we'd be happy to find out more about your specific reasons for participating and how we can help you share a compelling story that really inspires the people in your life to want to support you in this amazing cause with a donation. All right, next question. Is it better to ask over email, in person, or over the phone? Great question. I think what's great about fundraising is it's very individual, both for how we choose to do our fundraising and also when we think about our donors who we're reaching out to. I know, for example, that I can't ask my grandparents for a donation over email unless I never actually wanted to get it, which, it's not a knock to my grandparents. It's just that they don't check their email frequently. And I know that they would be more than happy to support my fundraising efforts, but I'd have to pick up the phone and tell them what I'm doing and how they can support me. And then, I'd need to mail them a donation form, or I'd have to tell my grandmother to check her email for the information that I sent to her. I know most of my friends that would most likely respond to an email. I would just do exactly that. Send them an email. I could send them a text that I sent them an email, but that would probably be overkill, but not beneath something that I would do, especially when it comes to fundraising. But what I needed to do and, what each individual needs to do, it goes back to the fundraising plan we spoke about. I make a list of everyone I'm going to ask to support me, and I figure out how I'm going to ask them because it's not the same for everyone. I also think the size of the donation that you're going to ask from someone will dictate which avenue you choose. If I was going to ask for a $1,000 donation, I'd try and do that face-to-face because that's a different type of ask. So I would say think about your donor and what would work well for them. I think the reality is, that we live in a very technical virtual world, and most people are likely going to be completely fine with you asking for a donation via email. The last thing I'll share on this topic is that social media has really changed how we ask for donations as well. There's no way that you can be as personal on Facebook as you could be through a personal email or a phone call or an in-person meeting. So if you choose to fundraise via social media, you should take note of who of your friends still haven't donated, people who may surprise you that you thought that they would, and send them an email. It took me a while to warm up to donating to some of my friends through their Facebook requests. I just personally didn't feel like they told me enough about what they were doing and why it was important to them and why I should, help them in the limited space that they had or in the limited information that they shared. So as a potential donor, that was information that I wanted. So just keep these kinds of things in mind when you decide how and where and when to ask for a donation. And I'll end by going back to one of the very first things that I shared in the beginning of the presentation, which is just all about asking. So whether you do it over phone, in person, or over email, the important thing is just that you're asking for the donation. So this is the end of the frequently asked questions. I do want to remind you that you have the opportunity to connect with our knowledgeable and friendly staff who can offer any sort of personalized fundraising support to match what will work best for you. We want to hear about your reasons for participating, what's inspired you to get started with this, and how we can motivate you to keep going. So I've provided you here on this slide with our phone number and our email address. So please make sure that you use that when you get in touch with us, as we would love to help you in any way that we can. Before we close, I just want to say thank you for your time and for all of the energy that you'll be putting into fundraising for Free to Breathe. And thank you for helping to turn the vision of doubling lung cancer survival into a reality.